All right, welcome everyone to How to Teach Addition Facts That Stick, hosted by the Well-Trained Mind Press. Our presenter tonight is Kate Snow, a homeschool mom and math educator. Kate's books, published by the Well-Trained Mind Press, help parents raise kids who are capable and confident at math. She blogs at kateshomeschoolmath.com. Kate will be talking to us about teaching addition facts, and then afterwards we'll answer some of the questions from you, our viewers. To ask a question, simply type it into the white panel marked questions. Our moderators will pass the questions to Kate at the end of the session. We have a full audience today, so please be patient as we try to answer as many questions as we can. We are recording this presentation and plan to upload it to our YouTube channel for you to rewatch or share with friends if you'd like. And now, here's our presenter for tonight, Kate Snow.
Hi everybody, and welcome to Addition Facts That Stick. I'm so glad to be with you tonight. I'm going to just get my slides up here in a second. Okay, and there we go. So as I said, thanks so much for joining me. I'm coming to you from my schoolroom/office in Grand Rapids, Michigan. It's about 15 degrees here, so I hope it is warmer wherever you are. If you're not familiar with my work, I'll tell you just a little bit about me, and then we'll get to the addition facts. So I've been passionate about teaching math for a long time. I majored in math and education at Harvard, and then I went on to teach 5th grade math for a while, and I took a year to also write elementary math curriculum. Once I had my babies, I stayed home for a while and then started homeschooling them. And as I started to meet homeschool moms at my co-op and at park dates and such, I was always getting questions about math. They were often asking me about what curriculum to use, or friends would tell me about a tricky concept that their kid just wasn't getting, that they needed some other strategies to teach. And it just showed me what a difficult subject math can be for a lot of homeschool parents, and it inspired me to want to help with that. So a couple of years ago, literally as a New Year's resolution, I started a blog and decided to just kind of go for it. And since then, I've been blogging, teaching classes, writing books to help parents teach math with confidence. And my goal is really to help you teach math in a way that makes you feel good, makes you feel like you know what you're doing, makes you feel like you are seeing results and helping your kids really enjoy math and succeed at it. And so that brings us to tonight's topic, the addition facts. So the addition facts seem kind of dull. I know they're the sums from 1 + 1 up to 9 + 9. And so they don't seem very exciting, but I get really excited when I help kids master the addition facts. I've had the chance to do this with my original 5th graders when I was teaching, for the ones who hadn't mastered them yet. I've had the opportunity to tutor a 4th grader who hadn't gotten them, taught my own kids, and helped other people teach them. And the reason I get excited is because the addition facts really put kids on the road to success in math. Without the addition facts, kids stumble, they have a lot of trouble because they don't have those basic skills in place. But once they have the addition facts, then they're ready to learn subtraction. They're ready to do multi-digit addition without having to stop all the time and figure out what 7 + 5 is. And they're even ready to tackle multiplication because that's repeated addition. They use all these skills as they keep going through elementary arithmetic. So I get really excited about the addition facts, and I'm really glad to be sharing these strategies with you tonight. So here's our plan. First, I'm going to talk for a little bit about the problems with the approach that most curricula take, the rote memorization approach. Then I'm going to teach you a different approach for teaching the addition facts to your kids. It's a lot more fun, a lot more satisfying than the usual approach, both for you and for your kids. And then finally, I'll take questions at the end. As John said, you can put your questions into the question box on your screen, and the moderators will set those up for me, and I'll take a look at them at the end of the presentation. So before I get into it, there's just one question I want to answer right off the bat, and that is what age is this good for? Because I'm sure if you're watching this, you're wondering if this is really a good thing for the age that your kids are at. Well, if you have a 1st grader who's just tackling the addition facts for the first time, this is an approach that works well with that age because it's concrete, it's not too abstract, and it makes a lot of sense to 1st grade brains. But it's also not babyish. So if you have a 4th, 5th, 6th grader who has always struggled with the addition facts, this is an approach that will work for that age too. Now, all of the strategies that I'm going to be showing you tonight are from my book, Addition Facts That Stick. I'll be telling you about the key 6 strategies that are included in the book, and then the book takes it a lot further with step-by-step lesson plans, games, and worksheets. And I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end. So I want to start here by going into the typical approach that most programs use. So usually how most curriculum approach the addition facts is they start by teaching the concept of addition. You know, they use manipulatives, show kids what addition means, work it out with a lot of different situations. And that's a fabulous start to learning what addition means. But then they tend to go straight to memorizing the addition facts here. Just go into a little arrow here so I can point to things. And so then they go straight to memorizing the addition facts and basically take the approach that the more drill, the more practice you do, the better off you'll be. And so there might be timed drills, there might be worksheets, there could be flashcards, but all of those different things, the basic idea is to have kids look at the addition facts over and over and over and over again until hopefully eventually they get into the kids' heads. And there's a lot of problems with this approach that kids end up having trouble with. One is that it can just take a long time. Sorry, just erasing here. So it takes a long time. Kids have to see the facts a lot of times before they get to the point where they can really memorize them, seeing them over and over again. Children often feel quite overwhelmed by them because they have so many to learn. There are 81 different facts from 1 + 1 up to 9 + 9. And it's a big stack of flashcards if you're just looking at all those addition facts at once. The third thing here is an attitude issue. When a child focuses on the addition facts as a rote memorization task, the child is really learning something about the discipline of math. The child's really learning that math is something to be memorized, not understood. And that can really have drawbacks down the road as a child needs to memorize what to do but not understanding why it works. And then lastly, it can be a problem because the facts aren't retained. It's so frustrating when you spent so much time trying to teach your child something and then it just kind of goes into their short-term memory and out again. And with the addition facts, we really want them in the long-term memory. And when you think about it, it makes a fair amount of sense in that the kids are memorizing them as short-term facts. They're not retaining what they're really about. And that's because kids don't have a whole lot else to go on when they're in the rote memorization mode. So when children think about 9 + 4, they might think about it like this. You know, 9 counters of one kind, 4 counters of another. 9 + 4, well, you push the piles together and count them again to find that they're 13. A slightly more sophisticated strategy might be a child who counts on and uses his fingers. So goes 9 and then wants to count 4 more. So goes 10, 11, 12, 13. But counting is pretty inefficient. It leads to a lot of mistakes. But kids don't have much else to go on when they're used to thinking of these piles of counters as just kind of this disorganized mess. And it ends up leaving parents and kids frustrated when after all this work for memorizing the addition facts, they're still not really sticking. And so what I found in my years of working with kids on the addition facts is that there's really a missing link here between this concept of addition and then memorizing the addition facts. We need something in between. And, well, 2 somethings in between, really. Kids need to learn how to subitize, which is learning how to visualize quantities, to be able to see numbers in their head. And then they also need addition strategies. These are ways to manipulate the quantities in their head so they're able to do things with them, to learn to see the answers and then to know the answers right off the bat. So before I get into the strategies, I want to give you a little bit of first-hand experience with subitizing. What I'm going to do is, so here's subitizing is just being able to tell how many there are without counting one by one. And I'm going to give you a little bit of experience with it. I'm going to flash some dots for just a fraction of a second, and you see if you can tell right away how many there are. So here we go. And so I only put that up there for probably about half a second or so. But you can see that, here's that slide again, you could probably tell right away that there were 4 dots. And there's a couple reasons why you could tell this. One is that they're organized in that nice pattern that we're used to seeing on dice, so that really helps. And then the second reason is that there's only a few of them. If there's only about 5, it's pretty easy for us to do. Brain scientists have found that our working memories can hold about 5 things at a time. And so this is why, for example, phone numbers or social security numbers are always chunked into groups of 3 or 4 numbers. We do pretty well memorizing those small chunks, but once it's a longer string of numbers, we can't hold it in our heads. The same is true of objects and being able to visualize them. So let's do another one. This one's going to be just a little bit harder. So here we go. And so for that one, it was probably a little bit more difficult. The dots were spread out, and there were slightly more. So here's that slide again. And you can see that there are 5. You probably were able to just tell that right away without counting, or you might have been able to see quickly that there was a group of 3 and a group of 2, and that you know that that's 5. So numbers up to 5 aren't bad, and kids can generally see those in their head pretty well. But once the numbers get higher, it becomes very difficult. So here comes a higher number. Can you tell how many dots were there that time? And my guess is you probably can't. You probably have a pretty good estimate. You know it's more than 5, less than 20. But for such a short amount of time, it's very difficult to tell how many dots there are once it is more than 5. So here's that slide again. And you can see that there's a group of 4 over here, a group of 5, so you can see that there's 9. Or you could count them one by one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that's just a brief introduction to Subitizing. Because it's so hard to visualize quantities when they're greater than 5, kids need a way to do this so that they'll be able to visualize quantities and not just have these disorganized piles in their heads. And so what I use for that is it's called the 10 frame. And you can see that this 10 frame is very simple. It's just 10 boxes in a row. And then that there's also, oops, sorry, I went ahead one. And that there is this dividing line in the middle. It divides the 10 frame into 2 groups of 5 boxes. And this makes it very easy to see the halfway point, and it makes it very easy to use that as a reference point for seeing how many are on a particular 10 frame. When we put counters on the 10 frame, we always work from left to right, just like reading, to reinforce that. And we always put them in without skipping boxes so that it's totally full and it's easy to tell at a glance how many there are. So for example, here's those 9 counters put on the 10 frame again. And now it's quite, it's pretty easy to tell that there are 9 just at a glance once you understand how the 10 frame works. There's a couple ways you might approach it. You might think about the fact that there's 10 boxes in the whole frame and one is empty, so there must be 9. Or you might think of this dark line as a dividing line. Think, oh, it's a group C, a group of 5 on one side, and a group of 4 on the other side. Together, that's 9 counters. And so that the structure of the 10 frame helps children to subitize, to be able to see numbers. But that's only part of what they need to be able to really master the addition facts. As they learn to subitize, they also need to learn addition strategies so that they can manipulate numbers and know what the sums are. And so that's back to this slide with subitizing and addition strategies are necessary to really master those addition facts. So when you're using addition facts strategies, this is kind of the overall approach. I want to give you the big picture before we dive into the details. The first step is to divide the facts into groups that can all be solved with the same strategy. And this makes learning the addition facts way less overwhelming. Once kids can focus on one group of facts and they know they can use the same strategy for all the facts, they feel much more confident in tackling that pile. Then what you do is you teach the strategy for that one group, and then you teach the child to use that strategy and practice the facts in that group until those facts are mastered. And then we get to step 4. Once the child knows that group, we mix up the facts with the other facts that the child knows and practice some more. And that's really important because children need to both learn how to use strategies, but they also need to learn how to choose the right strategy when they're not being told that, we're working on this particular strategy this week. So there are 6 different addition strategies, and each of them matches up with certain addition facts. And I'll show you which addition facts go with each of these strategies as we go through. You might be familiar with a couple of these, and some you might have never heard of before. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and show you how to teach each of these strategies using 10 frames, and to show you how you can which facts go with which strategy. So the first one we're going to do is strategy 1, adding 1 and 2. Here is the entire addition table. You can see it goes from 1 plus 1 up in the top corner all the way to 9 plus 9 in the bottom corner. And the plus 1 and plus 2 facts are all of the navy blue facts around the top side and then the left side of the addition strategies. So this of the addition table. So this first strategy works for all of those facts. And it's kind of nice that kids can learn all those facts all at once. It's a great confidence builder for them to be able to look at the addition table and think, oh, I will be able to, I'll know so many of them already just with one strategy. So to teach the adding 1 and 2 strategy, the basic idea is just to count on one more from whatever number, whatever the bigger number is. And for a lot of children, these are the easiest facts. If you have a child who struggles with the math facts, these might be ones they already know. But I recommend going over them with the 10 frame so that your child can get used to using the 10 frame and used to visualizing numbers on the 10 frame. So for example, to add 6 plus 1, you just put the 6 green counters on the 10 frame and then add one more to see that there's a total of 7. And teach the child to count one higher. So 6 plus 1, it just goes 6, 7. Answer is 7. To add 2, you do the same thing of counting forward 2. So 6 plus 2, you do 6, 7, 8. The answer is 8. And using the 10 frame to reinforce that. The next strategy is the pairs that make 10. These are these dark coral colored ones along the center diagonal. 5 plus 5, 6 plus 4, 7 plus 3. 8 plus 2 and 9 plus 1 are also ones in this category. Some of the math facts fit into multiple categories, and it's fine for children to use whichever strategy is the easiest or makes the most sense for them as they're doing that. So this next strategy is the pairs that make 10. And the 10 frame is very nice for helping kids visualize these pairs that make 10 because there's 10 boxes in the 10 frame. So for example, for a child to learn that 6 plus what equals 10, you can put 6 counters on the 10 frame and see that there's 6 boxes full, and look at and see right off the bat that there are 4 empty. So 6 plus 4 must equal 10. And I'm going to interrupt myself to say that you will be getting a link with your email at the end of this presentation that'll allow you to download a free 10 frame that you can use at home. So after the pairs that make 10, the next are the green, these green facts. These are the rest of the sums that are less than 10. And for this, we're going to use that dividing line in the middle of the 10 frame as a reference point or benchmark. So for 4 plus 3, you can teach your child to think about adding the second number in 2 steps. First, we add counters until we fill in the group of 5. So 4 and 1 more makes a 5. And then 2 more after that. We need 2 more from the 3, so we put 2 more after that dark line as a benchmark point. And then the child can see that 4 plus 3 equals 7. It makes it very visual to see what those sums are, and that dividing line at the 5 point helps the child to add those in the 2 steps. So that takes care of all of the sums that are less than 10. And now it's time to tackle the harder ones, all of the sums that are greater than 10. The next group that I like to work on are the plus 9 facts, which are these purple facts along the outer edge of the addition table. These are often pretty hard ones for kids because they do deal with bigger numbers, but the 10 frame continues to make it really doable. Except now we're going to use 2 10 frames because now, of course, we're going beyond 10. So to add 9 plus 4, what you do is you put each addend on a separate 10 frame. So here we have 9 green counters on the top 10 frame and 4 of these pink ones on the bottom. There's an empty box in the top 10 frame because that 10 isn't complete. And so what we do is we simply move one counter from the bottom to the top to fill it in. We didn't change it, we didn't take any counters away or add any on, all we did was move them. So this shows kids that 9 plus 4 is just the same thing as 10 plus 3. And so the answer to 9 plus 4 is 13. All it takes is just moving that 1 to complete the top 10 frame, and suddenly the answer is really clear. The next strategy of adding 8s is the same kind of thing. So these are these gray facts here, also in an L, and these are all of the plus 8 facts. And adding 8 is really a lot like adding 9. But of course now in our top 10 frame where we have 8 green counters, there's 2 empty boxes. So we need to move 2 counters from the bottom 10 frame up to the top to complete the 10. And so if I move 2 counters up, now I have a full 10 on top and 3 counters left on the bottom 10 frame. And so 8 plus 5 equals 13. And again, that's immediately visible when you see it on the 10 frame. And so now all we have left are the light pink facts here in the middle. 7 plus 4, 6 plus 5, 7 plus 7, some of those. And some kids will like to use a strategy similar to what they did for 8s and 9s. So here, for example, I have 7 plus 5. Some kids might think about filling in the 3 empty boxes at the top to see that the answer is 12. But I find that it's kind of like counting on. You can count on 1 or 2, but counting on 3 just gets a little bit more difficult. Same thing with moving 3 counters. It just starts to introduce a little more room for error. So if it works for your child to fill in the 10, that's totally great. But another strategy is what I call look at the leftovers. So what we're going to do is instead of moving counters from the bottom 10 frame to the top on this one, we are going to look at the groups of 5 on both 10 frames. So if you see we have a group of 5 at the top and on the bottom, and those two 5s together, of course, make a 10. And then we can just look at the leftovers. What is left beyond that? In this case, there's just 2 little counters left over beyond the 10. And so we can see that 7 plus 5 equals 12, a group of 10 and 2 more. And so that's the final strategy. And with just those 6 strategies, a child can master all of the addition facts. It's pretty amazing. It's a lot easier than just having a stack of 81 flashcards that have to be memorized. It really makes it a lot more doable. And so in terms of teaching these strategies, just a couple tips to throw out there. One is that you want to start, of course, by using manipulatives to teach and practice the strategy. This doesn't have to be anything fancy. You can just print out a 10 frame or draw one on a piece of paper and use any sort of counters or buttons or blocks and use it to work out the strategy. You want to focus on just one at a time. Once a child understands the strategy, then you want to encourage your child to visualize the 10 frame, to see the numbers in his or her head, and to manipulate them mentally. And as your child solves problems by first using the concrete counters, then by visualizing the counters, she or he will gradually begin to just know the answers, kind of see them in a flash, and know the answer right away without having to think about it, which is the best kind of memorization, being able to kind of see the answer but not have just memorized it totally by rote. These strategies also give the child something to fall back on. If he's having a bad day and just can't remember the answer to 8 plus 5, he can think through, oh, right, I just moved 2 from the 5 up to the 8. It's 13. And so it gives kind of a fallback position that you don't have if you're just memorizing. And so just to review, this is the kind of overall plan. So I've shown you now how we divide the facts into groups that can be solved with the same thinking strategy, and how to teach the strategy for one group. Now for number 3, when we use that strategy to practice the facts in each group, you can make up worksheets, you can make up flashcards, you can do that however you like. And then in number 4, you want to mix up those facts with the other known facts and practice some more. And so again, this is something you can do on your own. You can make up your own flashcards and worksheets, but if you'd like all the work done for you, that's what I put together here in my book. So in addition facts that stick, you'll find the scripted lesson for every strategy, a fun game that corresponds to the facts for that strategy, and then worksheets that practice the new facts and provide cumulative review. I estimate that you'd take about 1 week per strategy, doing about 15 minutes per day for 5 days per week. Definitely better to kind of do a little bit every day, not just to do a whole bunch on one day. But you have to adjust to your kid, of course. We know that all our kids learn at different rates. So if your child just bursts right through them, you can keep on going. And if your child needs a little bit more time with each strategy, that is just fine. The most important thing is that your child's really mastering each set of facts before moving on to the next one, so that she's really solid on them, feels confident on them, is ready to move on to the next group and the next strategy. So the book is organized into weeks, as I said, 1 week per strategy, and then organized into days. So on day 1, you teach the new strategy, and the lesson plan is laid out for you in a script. It's scripted, kind of tells you exactly what to do step by step, and with illustrations of a 10 frame to show you exactly how to use manipulatives to teach the lesson to your child. You can, of course, use your own words or adapt it to your child, but it gives you at least a good idea of how to teach it. Also on day 1, you introduce a new game to your child. So, for example, this is Climb to the Top, which is those sums that are less than 10, where we use 5 as a benchmark. And so you teach the child the rules and play the game a couple of times. I really like using games in general in math because they're fun, of course, and they make math time a lot more enjoyable, and they help kids have a positive attitude about math. But there's also really good pedagogical reasons for using games in math, especially with the addition facts. It's really helpful for you because you can monitor your child and how well she's using the strategy. Some kids, if you just hand them a worksheet, they'll just go off and count them all on their fingers. And so it allows you to push your child, make sure he's using the strategy, and if he's making mistakes, you catch those mistakes right away so they don't become habits, which is so helpful. It really saves a lot of trouble down the road. So after day 1, on days 2 through 5, you'll play the game again and have a practice page for your child to complete. These are just printed pages where your child will practice the facts from that week and then also do cumulative review of the facts that he's already learned. Because, of course, we do want our children to be able to solve problems independently, and they'll encounter a lot of their addition facts down the road in written form. But if you have a child who has fine motor difficulties or just really resists writing in math, it's fine to do these orally and to do the practice that way. And so Addition Facts That Stick is now available at welltrainedmind.com, and it's also available for pre-order at Amazon. I believe they're looking at about a January 24th release date for that. And so with that, you'll be able to find all those lesson plans, games, and the worksheets that will really help the Addition Facts stick for your child. And then I also want to let you know about a couple upcoming events. One is that I'll be doing a similar webinar to this one on January 17th at 8 p.m. again. That's on the subtraction facts. So if you'd like to attend that one, I suggest you sign up soon. I think there's only a few seats left, but I'd love to see you there at that one. Then in February and March, I'll be doing a 3-session workshop on fractions called Fractions That Make Sense. And it's a workshop for parents on everything you need to know to teach fractions to your child. It's aimed at about a 3rd through 6th grade level. I'll be talking about how to teach kids the concept of fractions, how to add and subtract fractions, and multiply and divide fractions, so all things fractions. And the website there you can go to check out that course. And then if you have a preschooler that you'd like to get set on a great track in math, I also have a book out called Preschool Math at Home. And it teaches Subitizing even to kids as young as 3 and 4, so they can start visualizing those numbers right off the bat. And it has a lot of just really fun, sweet games that you can play with your preschooler to give him or her a great start in math. As I said, I also have a website. My address is kateshomeschoolmath.com. There you'll find curriculum reviews, articles, and lots of help for teaching homeschool math at the elementary level. While you're there, take a look for my Quick Wins newsletter at the top of the site. I send that out just about every week. Some weeks are busier than others, of course, but it's a professional development for parents who teach math. I try to include about a 2-minute tip that you can read to help you teach math well and to feel confident as you teach math to your kids. So just a kind of a little tip that will help you along in your math journey. So that is the end of my sort of prepared presentation. And it looks like we have some good time for questions. So let me go in here and see what we have for questions. I have a very small little box that I need to bring out here. So hold on. Okay, so we've got some great questions in here. Let me just make sure I get them all. Great. So the first question is about the 10 frames. Several people asked, does it matter if you use a 10 frame that's 10 in a row versus a 10 frame that's 5 over 5? I've seen both frames used. And so yes, so both of those are used. I personally prefer to use this long one, this one that's 10 by 1, because I think it helps kids when they get to the end of the row for them to see that that's where they start over. It's just such a nice like stopping place. And it really helps to reinforce that place value thinking that we want to be developing at this age. But both are good. The 5 over 5 10 frame is also a really, helpful way to do them, and either are very good. I also have a question here about, let's see, so are the manipulatives included or suggested in the book, from Janine? So Janine, the book includes all of the game boards, cards, all the printables that you would need to do any of the games. You just need a couple small household items to complete the book. You need some sort of counter, some sort of blocks, buttons, something like that. I think it's also like a deck of cards, a couple dice, a couple things to use as game tokens. So you don't need to buy anything else, just a little bit of stuff around the house. Let's see, other questions. Oh, this is a great question. I taught my son to count with his fingers. Should we avoid teaching our children to count with their fingers? From Heather. So counting on fingers is a really wonderful way for young children to develop the understanding about what counting means. We want kids who are 4 and 5 to be counting everything in sight, like steps, stuffed animals, cookies, anything. But once they get to about the 1st grade level, they'll make a lot more progress if you try to encourage them to use what I call, it's kind of quick counting is one way to think about it. We want them to learn to use more efficient strategies, because counting everything one by one isn't as efficient. So a lot of the strategies that I taught you tonight will help to do that. And place value strategies, so for example, breaking something into 10s and 1s and adding them separately with mental math will do that. But in general, once kids are in 1st grade, moving them away from counting on their fingers will really help them down the road. Another question here from Kristen. Do you recommend teaching an almost 5-year-old addition facts? She seems to be interested in learning the skill, or do you think she's still too young? Well, in general, I think you're the parent, you know your child best, and if you're following your child's lead, you can't go too wrong. My overall advice for 5-year-olds is that it's perfectly fine to teach them addition when they're interested in math, to work on learning the addition facts, but that it's important not to have too high of expectations, not to expect them to be able to do them super fast, not to put a lot of pressure on them. So, for example, my daughter also and my son both learned the addition facts when they were 5, but they were not super speedy at them. It took them a little bit longer, but they learned these strategies and enjoyed them and enjoyed the games at the age of 5. But it took another year for them to really get to just absolutely, knowing them right off the bat. So go ahead, introduce them, enjoy them with a 5-year-old, but just don't, put any pressure on it or make it a stressful time, of course, with the little kindergartner. So here's a question from Susan. I have a 10-year, oops, I just lost Susan. Hold on. Sorry, I've got a little one here. So Susan says, I have a 10-year-old who struggles with learning math facts. We've tried many methods. One is an abacus, which is kind of like a 10 frame. How do you think this method works with dyscalculia, or do you have more suggestions? So an abacus is a lot like a 10 frame, Susan. And so there's definitely some overlaps between those two approaches. But the big difference between abacus and this, I think, is that with the abacus, you always do have to be sliding the beads. And so the trading becomes very abstract. It can be hard to think about how you're trading one bead for another. Doesn't feel quite the same as, say, moving it from a bottom 10 frame to another 10 frame. So this does make it a little bit more concrete for kids who need that more hands-on, can see exactly what's happening kind of thing. I've had some good success with a fourth grade tutoring student who struggled with dyscalculia, and this approach worked really well for her. But of course it depends on your child, that it could be a way that would help your child visualize the numbers. Subitizing is generally a highly recommended thing for kids who struggle with dyscalculia, so I do hope it's helpful for you. Janine is asking, how does the preschool book content compare to the individual books on addition and subtraction? Is there a book that includes all the strategies? So the preschool book is really geared towards about 4-year-olds who are just starting to get interested in numbers. Kind of interested 3-year-olds are also good for that book. And so that book focuses a lot on just teaching kids to recognize numbers. It just skims the surface of addition, does a little bit of teaching the idea of addition and subtraction, but it doesn't get into memorizing the addition or subtraction facts at all. So for example, in the preschool book, there's a game called Fingers Up and Fingers Down, where you put up a certain, or actually I think it's actually called something else, flashing fingers, something like that, where you just show, say, 4 fingers really quickly, and then put it behind your back and ask your child to tell how many there were. So a lot of kind of peekaboo games that teach subitizing, but in a really relaxed, friendly kind of way. Mallory asks, my son's math curriculum's already moved past this, and he seems to be doing okay but not great. Knows most math facts but not all. I think this approach would really help him. Would you recommend pausing his regular curriculum altogether and backtracking, or continuing on and introducing this as an extra fun math game time to reinforce? So Mallory, that's a great question. That's one I get asked a lot. And it can really go either way. It's really whatever your personal preference is. I think that spending about 15 minutes a day is about the right amount of time for the math facts. So one way to do it is to do maybe like half lessons in your regular math curriculum. Just slow it down a little bit, but keep on going. And then to spend about 15 minutes per day, it's kind of, this is the extra thing. But if you feel like it would help to just spend a few weeks doing it, it's so much better to lay a groundwork that's solid than to just keep slugging along when slugging along and having your child's working memory be so bogged down by this other stuff, by the addition facts, that he can't, process the new concepts and move as efficiently into the new work. So I do feel like the facts are just the absolute foundation of these elementary years. They're the most important thing that we can get across in math to really help our kids be successful long term. Another question here from Lisa. Would you use these strategies along with Right Start B? I'm using it with a kindergartner. Yes, these are really compatible with Right Start B. The abacus and the 10 frame are a little bit different, but it's Right Start does a lovely job working on the facts, but this puts it all together into one clump in kind of an organized way instead of having them spread out with the spiral of Right Start B. Looking through here. Another question regarding curriculum from Sarah. I'm using Saxon 1 and I'd love to teach addition facts that stick. Should I do both? So Sarah, I'd say pretty much the same thing I said about curriculum for the other question, that it's completely fine to do both and they'll complement each other just fine, but you might want to do half lessons in Saxon while you're working on addition facts that stick, or if it gets to be February and everybody needs a break from the regular math curriculum, games are always a good thing to do. I usually take a little break from our regular curriculum just because I feel like we all need just something a little bit different in February. So that's another option too. Olivia asks, my child's coming from a Montessori background. Is there anything I should be aware of transitioning from her school methodologies to this? I only know a little bit about Montessori, Olivia, so I can't speak to that too much, but in general, certainly the the hands-on and visual and manipulative approach to math will fit a lot with what she's been doing. But I don't know about specific techniques that Montessori uses. So you might want to talk to a Montessori person for that. Let's see. What are your thoughts on introducing math literature? Picture books that explain concepts or math history through story. I love using picture books to make math more fun, to make it more interesting, and for kids who love stories, it's just a great way to connect that love. And what kid doesn't love a story? But it's a great way to kind of connect that love to math. My kids go to a homeschool enrichment program here in Grand Rapids, and I teach math enrichment for just 2 classes a day, which is so much fun. And with my first and second graders, they just sit spellbound when I read them books about math. It's, I think, they just can't get enough of it. It's such a sweet time. And I think math can so often be a source of stress or a source of conflict in homeschools, and so the more we can make it fun and light and like a nice snuggly time on the couch, the better. Karen asked, will this book help with a 3rd grader struggling with basic facts, or will it feel too simple? I struggle to help my daughter catch up without her feeling like it's babyish. That's a great question, Karen. That's something that actually, when we were designing the book, we were specifically thinking about, that we didn't want it to feel like too grown up for a 1st grader, but too babyish for a 3rd grader. So when you get the email that has a link to the sample, or you can just go to welltrainedmind.com and see a full PDF sample of the book. I think they give you a whole nice unit with a lesson, a game, and the worksheets. You can take a look at it and see how it feels, but I don't think it's babyish at all for a 3rd grade. It's very clean, very simple, and should work for kids for a lot of ages. Kenya is asking, does it matter in what sequence we teach the facts? My 8-year-old is memorizing the multiplication tables, but she hasn't mastered addition and subtraction. Can I teach more than one simultaneously, or wait? In general, I recommend that you build from addition to subtraction to multiplication and then to division. And that's because they really do, all those operations do build on each other. Once kids know the addition facts like 6 plus 5 equals 11, then they can use the reverse of that, right, to figure out what 11 minus 6 is. They can use that related fact. Knowing the addition solid also really helps with learning the multiplication tables, because then kids can use the facts that they know with some addition to figure out facts they don't know. So for example, 7 times 6 is one of the multiplication problems that kids often have like the most trouble with. But 5 times 7 isn't usually very hard for them. So think of 7 5s as 35. And so 7 times 6 is just one more group of 7. And so you can do 35 plus 7 to equal 42. That can be a stepping stone to becoming completely fluent with that fact. So I do recommend getting addition and subtraction down first before going on to the multiplication and division tables. And I would recommend doing only one at a time just to keep it simpler, to help your child stay more focused. And because with some focus, a 3rd grader can really polish off the addition facts pretty quickly. And it's just such a good feeling when you can get one totally done and feel like you've got it. Scrolling through here a little bit. Susan's asking, is there a full curriculum that also uses 10 frames? No, I haven't been able to, I haven't written a full curriculum or anything that uses this. I don't know one that specifically uses 10 frames. A couple people mentioned Right Start, which uses Abacus, so along the same lines and worth taking a look at, but I don't know one that's just specifically for that. Rachel is looking for perhaps an alternative to Saxon 1 and Abeka 1. That the Saxon kindergarten and Abeka kindergarten are very easy for her, but the grade 1 work is too fast. So I have a lot of reviews on my website, and that might at least be a starting place for you if you're looking for some alternatives to consider. I don't know Saxon and Abeka well enough for how fast they go to be able to recommend something that's gentler. But I do have full reviews on my site of Right Start, Singapore Math, and Math Mammoth, as well as Math UC. So if you're considering any of those, that'd be a great place to look and get started. Oh, here's an, and let's see, I see a question about Life of Fred. Let me go up a little bit. Would the addition fact approach you recommend work with Life of Fred? And yes, I think this is a great supplement for Life of Fred. If you're not familiar with Life of Fred, it's a kind of a storybook-oriented math curriculum, and a little bit zany, very funny, and something that kids really love. But it doesn't provide a ton of practice problems. I feel like I've even seen the author say that, you should go practice, but that's not what I'm teaching you in this particular book. I'm teaching you kind of the concepts. And Life of Fred does a really nice job of that, but most kids are going to need more practice than Life of Fred provides directly in the book. And this is a nice supplement for that would obviously give your child really structured, systematic practice with the addition facts. Susan asks, I think you were saying that the ones and twos is the count-up strategy. How do you explain not to use the count-up strategy for the rest of these? And I really explain it as a matter of efficiency, that I want to teach my kids the fastest, best, most efficient ways to find the addition facts. And so adding 1 and 2, we can do it super fast. We don't have to think too hard about it with counting. But that once it's more than that, it's just too much to keep in our minds. And kids, a lot of kids really like that idea of being able to do their math fast. Sometimes I even call it quick counting. Using the 10 frame, it lets us, instead of counting one by one, we're moving groups in our head. And so it's just a different way of counting, a different way of finding answers fast. Let's see, Jamie is asking, do you have recommendations for math curriculum or programs for late elementary age kids, 4th through 6th grade? Do take a look at my website, Jamie, at kateshomeschoolmath.com for the reviews I have for that, for those 4 curricula that I really recommend and think are really great choices. See if one of those might be a good fit for you. Oh, and if I have a quiz on my website, and it's kind of just a fun quiz. I can't tell you that it's going to give you, it's not scientific or anything. But if you search quiz on my website, I did put together a fun quiz, which is like 5 questions or so that you can answer and get a recommendation for a curriculum that might be at least a starting point, something to explore with your kids as a possibility. A question from Sarah. Will you be writing a book about multiplication and division facts that stick? And have you written subtraction facts that stick? So yes, Sarah, I have written subtraction facts that stick, and I actually believe just today it is live on the welltrainedmind.com website, and now will be available for pre-order at Amazon. So you can take a look there. You can see a sample of it, and I'll be doing a webinar for that book coming up in a couple of weeks here. I'm planning to write multiplication and division facts that stick, but they're still in the planning stage, so they're at least a year out from now, possibly a little bit more. So maybe addition and subtraction facts this year, and then we'll get to multiplication and division next year. Janine asks, just clarifying for myself, do you consider your book supplemental or able to be used as curriculum? I do consider them supplemental, Janine. I don't have enough out to, really give your child a comprehensive math education. So the addition facts and subtraction facts, they will teach your kids the addition facts and subtraction facts very thoroughly. But you need much more than that, obviously, for giving your child a well-rounded math experience. Sarah asks, I have a preschooler. Would you teach counting on at all or go straight to Subitizing? I would go straight to Subitizing, Sarah. Counting on is perfectly fine as an in-between step, but teaching kids really to think of numbers as groups, as quantities, is really much more effective for the long haul. The less counting they do in terms of being able to recognize quantities, the better. I know that kind of goes against a lot of what we do in American education. I think, not to pontificate too much, but I think this is one of the fundamental problems in how we teach math in America. And so the more we can teach kids to really recognize numbers, the better off they'll be. It will help them move into more sophisticated strategies, into more deeper thinking about math more quickly. Let's see. Can you comment on the use of number bonds? So number bonds are a way to represent represent sums, or not necessarily sums, I guess to represent parts and wholes. So for example, to represent 10 as 6 and 4. So 6 and 4 are the two parts and 10 is the whole. And they can be very helpful for teaching kids to understand that subtraction is the opposite of addition. I think that's one of their best uses. And they're very helpful for helping kids understand that underlying structure. That if one part is missing, we can figure it out by using either a missing add-in problem in addition or a subtraction problem. I find them very useful, but they can also be very abstract for young kids. So if you have a kindergartner, first grader, second grader who kind of looks at number bonds and isn't really quite sure what to do with them, it might just be that's a little too early and they're not quite seeing how that all fits together. So I recommend keeping on introducing them, using them lightly, but also using lots of real stuff. And it doesn't have to be anything specific, just real counters, real blocks, real stuff to really act out problems so kids can see what math, see how the numbers relate to real life. It's really our number one goal at this age is for kids to think about math as a real thing, as something they can think through and see and understand, and not just as something they're memorizing. Susan asks, what curriculum do you recommend for my super struggling 10-year-old? Oh, sorry to hear that, Susan. We started out with a Right Start and have supplemented because she didn't really seem to hold on to what she was learning. I recommend taking a look at Math UC for a child who's really struggling. That kind of really thorough mastery and the step-by-step building of the concepts might be a good thing to look at. And again, I have a review of that on my website that you might want to take a look at. Right Start has a lot of great features about it, but it does spiral very quickly. And so for a child, some children might just need to stick with the topic a little bit longer than that. And Math UC sticks with one topic for pretty much the whole year. So kids really get immersed in one particular topic. A couple questions here about math enrichment picture books, or do I have a recommended book list? And honestly, I don't. I tend to pick the topic that I'm about to teach and go to the library and look at what's available. So most libraries are full of great picture books, something librarians have really worked on, I think, in the last decade or so to try to have a great variety of nonfiction books. Hopefully you have a good library near you. I know not everybody does. But to just kind of look around and see what your library has is a great place to start. In terms of one series, I think that it's the Math Starts series is the best overall series that I've found. Their books are always really cute. They're really engaging for kids. The math concepts are clear, and they're not too boring. There's some series out there where you just want to poke your eyes out. It's like you've added 17 different things by the end and nobody cares. But Math Stars usually has a pretty good story and usually very sweet illustrations. And so that's also a good series to look at. Just going through here and seeing what else we've got. Oh, Christine asked, I missed where we can get the book. Is it on Amazon? Yes, it is on Amazon, Christine, and then also at welltrainedmind.com. And it's available, I should say, in both PDF form at Well-Trained Mind or in Kindle form at Amazon. And the PDF is a nice way to go if you do think you're going to be printing it for more than one child. That would allow you to print more than one copy at a time for your own family, of course. Heather asks, other than using a 10 frame, what other ways do you teach Subitizing? So to teach Subitizing, Heather, the first thing is to make sure that your child can Subitize up to 5, recognize quantities up to 5. In my preschool book, I have a whole chapter on this with, I think, 10 different activities for this. So I think I said before that peekaboo is a great way, so I'll show you here. So if I just say, okay, I'm going to flash some fingers, get ready, tell me how many there are, and put some fingers up and then hide them behind your back, and then put the fingers up and put them up and flash them and say, how many were there? And the child says, okay, 2, and you show them again. Another fun way to do it is to do cookies on a plate. Preschoolers love this with the stuffed animal. If you put a stuffed animal out in a little paper plate and put a couple cookies on the plate, but then you cover it with a piece of paper and you just flash the number of cookies and ask your child to tell how many there are after they're covered again. And you can adjust the speed to your child. So that's subitizing up to 5. Subitizing from 5 to 10, then you want to be thinking of ways to organize the quantities, right? Because we can't really tell more. If it's scattered, we can't tell. So again, using hands, where you have one whole hand and then a couple more fingers. That's a great way to work on those. Tally marks, you can make those, put those on cards where you have a group of 5 and then some extra tally marks. So those are a couple ways to do it. Also, if you want to see those, the preschool ways in action, I have a video both on my website and on the welltrainedmind.com website where I demonstrate some of those preschool activities with a very, very sweet little preschooler. So Jackson and I we compared cookies and we do some of those subitizing with fingers activities. So you can look for that. I think on YouTube it's called Kate Snow Demonstrates Preschool Math at Home. And then I also sit down with Susan Wise-Bauer and we talk about our own kids as preschoolers and kind of our general thoughts on preschool math. So take a look for that for some specific subitizing activities. Scrolling down here to see. So Karen said, it looks like the subtraction book has a sample but not addition unless I'm missing something. Well, thank you, Karen. That's good to know. I wonder, we're still in the midst of the launch process here for these books. So it's quite possible we just didn't get that up there. So we will make sure that that gets fixed soon. And you can take a look in your email tomorrow for a link to a sample as well. Another question, any ideas for teaching math to preschool and elementary students simultaneously? We'd like to have a family math time eventually. That's such a great idea. The more we can do math together as a family, the more we can teach anything to multiple kids at a time, the better, that's for sure. But it can be difficult because math is a skill subject, and often an elementary schooler will be quite a bit ahead of where a preschooler is, obviously. I did do a whole podcast with Pam Barnhill about this last spring in her Your Morning Basket podcast. So look for that talk with her on, let's see, I'll see if we can get that link out somehow. But it's on the edsnapshots.com website. That's edsnapshots.com. And she has a Your Morning Basket podcast, and I was a guest on that last May. I think it's episode 18. And we talked about lots and lots of ideas for morning time math, for things that the whole family can do together. There were also, I did have some specific book recommendations in that podcast as well for books that the whole family can enjoy. In my home, it often takes the form of things like cooking together, of reading a picture book together, doing a measuring project, or some sort of real-life activity where we need to use some math, and that both my first grade daughter and my 4th grade son can be engaged in helping with different parts of the project. So I'm afraid we are just about out of time here. So thank you all so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you taking this hour to hear about addition facts. If there's anything that you still have questions about, please feel free to take a look around on my website, kateshomeschoolmath.com, see if I have an article to help you with that, or feel free to shoot me an email at the contact menu. And look in your email for links to the video, slides, and a free sample tomorrow so that you can take a closer look at addition facts that stick. And feel free to share that with a friend or pass it on to someone else who might be working on teaching their kids the addition facts. Then also just a reminder, I'll be teaching the subtraction facts that stick webinar on January 17th at 8 p.m. and the fractions that make sense 3-session workshop in February and March. So thank you all so much for attending tonight. I hope you have a great night and wish you lots of happy math.